have no idea who you are.
DC Studios is finally pulling one of Batman's strangest enemies out of animation and into live action. And the new Clayface trailer makes one thing clear. This is not being sold as a traditional superhero movie. It is a body horror story about a man losing control of his face, his identity, and eventually the line between human and monster. Tom Rhys Harries plays Matt Hagen, and the trailer gives us a much deeper look at how his life changes after seeking help from Dr. Caitlyn Corr. Played by Naomi Ackie, at first, the treatment appears to offer him a second chance. Instead, it transforms his body into something unstable, shape-shifting, and increasingly impossible to control. That is the strongest part of the footage. Clayface's powers are not presented as a cool ability he immediately masters. Every transformation looks painful. His skin moves in the wrong direction, his features collapse and reform. And the more he tries to regain control, the less human he appears. The trailer also gives us our first real look at Matt becoming the creature fans know from the comics. Caitlyn watches in horror as his body expands into a full Clayface form, and the scene looks less like a superhero origin and more like a medical nightmare. That choice fits the creative team perfectly. James Watkins, who directed Speak No Evil, is handling the film, while the screenplay comes from Flanagan, one of the strongest modern voices in emotional horror. Together, they appear to be treating Clayface as a tragedy first and a comic book villain second. Clayface has always been more interesting when the character is not simply a giant mud monster. Matt Hagen's ability to become anyone creates obvious action possibilities, but it also opens the door to paranoia, identity loss, obsession, and fear. If you can wear any face, what happens when you no longer recognize your own? The trailer seems built around that question. Matt experiments with his appearance, trying to make small changes and hold a stable form. But each attempt looks temporary. His body behaves like something alive but separate from him, almost as if the clay itself is deciding what he should become. Naomi Ackie's Caitlyn may be the emotional center of the story. She appears to be the person who helps Matt before fully understanding the consequences of the experiment. That gives her a complicated role. She may be his doctor, his ally, and the person most responsible for creating the monster. Her reaction to his transformation suggests the film will not treat the science lightly. There is guilt in the footage, but also fear. Caitlyn may want to save Matt while slowly realizing that saving him and stopping him could become the same mission. The new trailer also gives us a much clearer sense of Gotham City. James Watkins has said he and James Gunn wanted a Gotham with corruption, pollution, and visual personality without making the entire city colorless and dark. That is an important distinction. Gotham does not need to be permanently gray to feel dangerous. The trailer uses color, neon, dirty interiors, crowded streets, and strange medical spaces to create a city that feels alive and unhealthy at the same time. That visual approach separates the DC universe from earlier Batman movies. Matt Reeves' Gotham is built around rain, shadow, and crime noir realism. Clayface looks more willing to embrace comic book color while still treating the horror seriously. The connection to Creature Commandos is especially interesting. Clayface already appeared in the animated series, and Peter Safran has confirmed that this is the same version of the character. However, the movie takes place before those events. That means we already know Matt survives his origin and eventually becomes the shape-shifting threat seen in the series. The tension will not come from wondering whether he becomes Clayface. It will come from discovering what he loses during that transformation. That structure can make the tragedy stronger. The audience knows there is no clean cure waiting at the end. Every hopeful moment carries the knowledge that Matt is moving toward a future where his original life is effectively gone. One thing the movie will not include is Batman. That may disappoint some viewers, but I think it is the correct decision. DC Studios is still developing the brave and the bold, and no actor has officially been cast as the DC Universe's Bruce Wayne. Forcing Batman into Clayface before that larger plan is ready could reduce Matt's story to set up for another hero. By keeping Batman away, The film can allow Clayface to exist as the central character rather than simply becoming the villain of someone else's movie. It also creates a more unsettling question. What happens in Gotham when Batman is not there to contain the situation? The trailer suggests the city will have to face this transformation through doctors, police, criminals, and ordinary people who have no idea whether the person standing in front of them is real. Shape-shifting naturally creates paranoia. Matt can copy faces, enter places he should never reach, and turn trust into a weapon. But the most frightening possibility is that he may not always know which form is truly his. That is where Mike Flanagan's influence could become most important. His best horror stories are rarely only about monsters. They are about grief, guilt, family, addiction, and the emotional weakness that allows horror to take control. Clayface could use the same approach. Matt may not become dangerous because the experiment instantly turns him evil. He may become dangerous because he is terrified, isolated, and desperate to rebuild the person he used to be. If the movie gives him a goal audiences understand, every violent decision will become more disturbing. We may recognize the human need beneath the monster even when his actions become impossible to defend. There is also a larger reason this film matters for the DC universe. Clayface has usually been treated as a supporting Batman villain, but this movie is giving him the kind of attention normally reserved for major heroes that is a risk. But it could expand the franchise. If DC Studios can turn a less familiar villain into a successful horror lead, then characters like Man-Bat, Professor Pig, and other darker corners of Gotham become possible. The upcoming comic series suggests DC wants Clayface to become a significant figure rather than a what-if experiment. Because the movie takes place before Creature Commandos, Matt could later return in The Brave and the Bold or another Gotham story. But for now, the most interesting thing is that the film does not appear afraid of making him frightening. The clay effects look physical, wet, and uncomfortable. The transformations focus on distorted anatomy rather than clean digital spectacle. Matt's face becomes something that can betray him at any moment. Clayface opens in theaters on October 23rd, placing it perfectly inside the Halloween season. I want to know what you think about this new trailer. Does a full-body horror approach finally make Clayface work in live action, or would you rather see him introduced opposite Batman? Either way, DC Studios is making a bold promise. Before Matt Hagen becomes one of Gotham's most dangerous villains, we are going to watch the man underneath the face disappear.